Today's episode is brought to you by Taft Law and its Franchise Advance program, a one-of-a-kind program developed by your host, Josh Brown, to help entrepreneurs assess, convert, and grow your business the right way through sound franchise structures. To learn more, go to taftlaw.com and type Franchise Advance Program in the search bar.
If you think like, act like, or are trying to grow like a franchise, then the Franchise Euphoria podcast is for you. Hello and welcome everybody. Josh Brown here, and I created this podcast for one main goal: to help people who are trying to grow their business through franchising or franchise-like structures to do it the right way. I've been practicing law now as a franchise lawyer for many, many years, and I've seen it done the right way and the wrong way. And this podcast is not filled with a bunch of legal mumbo jumbo. Rather, I talk with real people, people who have been there, have done it, are doing it right now. And I also dive deep into specific topics related to franchising. So if this is of interest to you, you are at the right place. Enjoy. On today's episode of Franchise Euphoria, I'm thrilled to have on David Bloom, who's the Chief Development and Operating Officer of Capriotti's and Wing Zone, two separate franchise systems. David's early career in the restaurant and hotel industries included working with and for some of the most iconic brands and leaders in their respective industries, where he learned how to strategically accelerate sustainable brand expansion. Today, David is responsible for all aspects of franchise development and operations for Capriotti's and Wing Zone, scaling both brands to new heights. And we're going to talk today about that growth, along with several other things. Welcome to the show, David. How you doing?
Great, Josh. First of all, I hope I can live up to that billing. Second of all,
I'm sure you will. Well, I'm excited because, as you and I were talking a little bit pre-recording, I've been doing this show now for over 10 years. It's not the norm that I have on somebody who is involved with two brands together, and they're obviously both in the food space, with Capriotti's being focused more on, the sandwich world, and Wing Zone, hence the name, focused more on wings. So I'm looking forward to kind of touching base on all of that and seeing how you work those together. But before we dive into that, tell us about yourself a little bit and what led you to start working with Capriotti's and Wing Zone.
Yeah, sure. Well, I kind of grew up in the business, restaurants, hotels, and, early on, I attended UNLV in Vegas and graduated and went to work for Brinker. And then during the go-go years of Steak and Ale and Bennigan's, and he went on to do Chili's and a bunch of other stuff. And so I kind of was raised up by what I would call somewhat the founding father of, casual dining. And then pretty early on, I was working for a hotel company based out of London, and we were taking over a hotel in Denver, and I got acquainted with Quiznos subs. And at the time, there were 18 stores only in Denver, Colorado. And we put together a partnership, and my partners and I quickly became the largest franchisees, opened the first stores outside of Denver, then outside of Colorado, and then, acquired some development territories and opened several hundred stores. And then I joined corporately as well, and we grew that brand from that 18 store beginning to 5,000 stores in 28 countries. So wow. That's kind of where I learned, again, with, working for and with some just incredible people, how to really scale brands, and have been doing that for a long time since. I've, done it in other verticals now. I've done it in education companies and home services companies, but I would say my home base and my passion is around restaurants. My brother's still an executive chef. I have a sister that's a pastry chef. So, I kind of grew up in that in New York City and always get drawn back to it. A good friend of mine, David Barr, who I think is probably one of the preeminent franchise guys in the world today. He sits on probably 20 different boards and has investments in all kinds of companies that are really best in class. He invested in Capriotti's and joined the board probably 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. And I had worked for David. He was a chairman of the board of another company and had recruited me to come work for him. So that's how I landed here as Visa David. And I've been here 6 years. And so we've been growing Capriotti's, really pretty quickly, especially in the last few years. And then about 2.5 years ago, Capriotti's acquired Wing Zone to add to the arsenal, so to speak, and have been growing that, exponentially as well. Although that's earlier in the pipeline, so it doesn't, have as much runway as Capriotti's has had, which we've owned for a long time. So, but both are in the fast casual space, very similar footprint from a real estate standpoint, very similar unit economics, both heavy off-premise delivery, both very technology forward. And so they kind of fit our wheelhouse and what we look for in terms of brands.
Well, I think part of the reason you're drawn back to restaurants, David, is because it's just so easy, right? I mean, it's just so easy to run these restaurants.
Oh God!
I mean, you chose the easiest route. I mean, I can just tell. No, I'm kidding. Gosh, that's a really interesting story. I remember you'd mentioned Steak and Ale. Is that right? At the outset,
yeah.
They have that great? Wasn't that a great salad bar they had there at the Steak and Ale? They were kind of.
They did, but I just have to say Norman Brinker, who started Steak and Ale, then Bennigan's, and then literally invented the whole national casual dining segment. If you go back a few years, you would probably see a large percentage of restaurant companies really successful, from Outback Steakhouse to Fridays to Boston Market to senior leaders in every one of those brands. Many of them could trace their upbringing back to having worked for Brinker Norman at some point, and that's really kind of what got me going in this category, and it's really built up my passion for growing brands. I will say, having worked I think in 33 countries to date, and having lived around the world a little bit, you'd be surprised. This is tough, but living in Nairobi, Kenya, and growing an educational company in the developing world, a lot more dangerous than this. So,
interesting. Well, I mean, gosh, you've got such a great background, both on the franchisee and the franchisor side. I got to imagine, I mean, obviously you've been able at all sorts of different points to be able to pull those experiences together, to help you, on the franchisor side of things. I mean, talk a little bit about, I mean, you've got Capriotti's and you got Wing Zone. And of course, with Capriotti's, for those who aren't familiar with it, explain what it is.
Yeah, I mean, the brands do differ a little bit. So Capriotti's is all about the food. We've won Greatest Sandwich in America. We win Best Stuff awards no matter what market we go to for our cheesesteaks or our Bobby, which is the sandwich that won Greatest Sandwich in America. We're actually, we roast whole butterball turkeys every night in every restaurant. We're actually the largest restaurant buyer of butterball turkeys in the world. Butterball raises a line of turkeys just for us called the Capriotti Super Tom. But other products like our roast beef, the only roast beef we carry is Snake River Farms American Wagyu roast beef. So it's the very best roast beef you can buy anywhere, in the United States. So it's really about having a very differentiated product. It's obviously a premium product. But that's really, in a nutshell, people will drive, and you literally have, generational, following of our brand. People are, it was for many years almost what I would call a cult following, where we did no advertising, no marketing. It was just word of mouth. Since then, now that we've become a national brand, we're obviously a lot more sophisticated, and we're entering new markets and actually starting international development for Capriotti's for the first time right this year.
And how many locations do you have for Capriotti's right now?
We've got about 100, just about 190 open today, with about 300 in development domestically.
Oh, wow.
And another 50 in development internationally. Wing Zone, a little bit different. We acquired it about 2.5 years ago and spent the first year really just kind of deep diving. We brought in what I would call the best restaurant consulting firm in the world, Livet Design out of Madrid, and they really helped us do a deep dive in rebranding and reformatting for expansion. And we also always believe in owning and operating the brands that we're franchising, and there were no corporate wing zones when we acquired it. So we brought the offices to Vegas and started opening up corporate stores to make sure, we were really good at operating and had a foundation for testing and development and training and all the things that we think are important. Wing Zone, though, is...
Can we hold on one second before we go to Wing Zone? I think you just raised a really important point. There's different philosophies in franchising. There's franchisors who wholeheartedly believe they don't want to do any corporate stores. They want all franchise. And then there's, like you mentioned, folks like yourself who believe in the value of having corporate stores. If you ask my personal opinion, I'm more in line with what you do, because I think what better way to give you an opportunity to see what's really going on than to own corporate stores. Otherwise, how do you really get that sense? How do you really stay in the game in terms of being able to help your franchisees? Is that sort of the philosophy behind why it's important to own corporate locations?
I've seen both, obviously, and I've talked to lots of franchisors that believe differently than me. So I would say in the restaurant space, where there's so much testing of product, technology, long-term investments that maybe take years to figure out, we find it to be super valuable. So I think it may a little bit depend upon what you're franchising, but I will tell you, it means that we wake up every day looking at exactly the same thing, the same numbers, the same impacts. If food cost goes up a little bit, or labor costs change, or some regulations come down, we see it first. And because we're one of the larger operators, we're actually hurt by any mistakes that we make more than anybody else. So it just guarantees, that we're on the same page as our franchise partners, literally every single day. So I think it's invaluable. We could not innovate, test, and have this roadmap, this technology innovation roadmap that we have without company stores, because it would just be very difficult to expose a franchise partner to those types of risks before we've figured things out on our own. So
yeah. So do you make it a habit? Do you make it a habit to roll things out when you're rolling things out just to the corporate stores, or do you do segments of corporate stores and franchise stores?
We always start the test in a corporate store. Because we don't even know if it's worthwhile to really put a lot of time and energy into. Like you have a thesis that says, hey, we're going to roll out artificial intelligence or robotics, or we're going to roll out this new product or this new training platform or whatever it is, anything. Until you put it into real life, you don't even know, should I actually put a lot of energy behind this and start expanding? What kind of return does it have, and where does it rank with all the other innovation, with all the other tests we have going on? It's just, should we move this up the list because it really can impact the sales and profitability or ease of operations, or should we park it over here? It's nice, it's interesting, it could work well, but the time it's not ready for prime time yet. So there's a lot of just early on decision making, and we really need to, and I will tell you, especially around technology, it never works out of the box. It always takes a lot of tinkering, a lot of, iterative thinking to really maximize it. And so we find that type of, that roadmap where we take the risks, we make the investments, and then when they prove themselves out. Now, I will say franchise partners will also want to do that, and we certainly okay that, from time to time. They may say, hey, Dave, we want to try this new piece of equipment. We want to go with electrical instead of gas, or we want to try beer, dispensing in our wings. We do certainly do that where they're taking the lead. But we want to make sure that they're really well prepared for that. They understand the risks. We want to make sure we're prepared to support them in that. So it's not the norm. We try to do it ourselves first, but we certainly have, plenty of instances where they take the lead.
Yeah, interesting. And then you were segueing into Wing Zone, talking about Wing Zone. Go ahead and sorry I interrupted you, but I thought that was a really important point because it's something that is just very common in franchising. And to your point, there's not really a right or wrong answer to it. I mean, I tend to agree with you when you're in the restaurant business and things are just so fluid. It makes a lot of sense to have some of those corporate stores for all the reasons that you alluded to.
Yeah, and I will tell you, just as a franchisor, it's important to our business that we operate those stores because we make money. That's where some of our financial resources come from. We operate those stores. We make a lot of money at it, and it supports our bottom line, so we can make some of those other investments. So I'll leave that alone.
Let's talk about Wing Zone for a minute.
Yeah, Wing Zone is, wings, I will say candidly, is somewhat more of a commodity. Everybody's basically buying the same wings. I would say all of the top tier players have great sauces. Everybody has innovation around flavors. Everybody delivers. Those were two things: innovation around flavor and delivery. That Wing Zone prior to us acquiring it were early innovators on. But we felt like we could really take the brand to the next level, really, double down on the investment ahead of growth, really kind of making sure that we were the best operator in this space. And I think about the Domino's model. When you look at Domino's Pizza and why they've done so well for the last 25 or 30 years, is they're the best operator in the pizza delivery space. They're the most efficient, the heavy use of technology, and just, they've killed it for decades. And when we think about Wing Zone, that's sort of the same focus. How do we make sure we position the brand from a consumer standpoint to be where they want us to be, which nowadays consumers want you to be omnichannel. They want you to be everywhere. They want you to be convenient. They expect great food. They expect hot food. They expect all those things. And it's our job to figure out how to make money while we do all that and innovate and lean heavily on the new technologies that are coming in. So our positioning on Wing Zone is for us to be the most innovative, best flavor in the space, in the wing space. And when we acquired it with only 70 restaurants during the pre-acquisition, Wing Zone was actually already number 2 in the QSR space, but the number 1 was Wingstop with like 1,300 restaurants. So lots of blue sky, between us, and our mission, our goal is to make sure we are the undisputed number 2. So
is it similar? Is it a similar franchisee that you guys are looking for both concepts? I mean, is it a similar type of franchisee? And I presume it's a multi-unit type operator.
Yeah, we only do. That's interesting. When we acquired Wing Zone, it was more of a single unit operator system. Most people owned one store, a few people owned 2, and we are pretty much exclusively a multi-unit operator system. Almost nobody starts with us with a commitment for one store. They always start with a commitment for at least 3, and on average between 3 to 5 and some more. But so that was a change in philosophy. Is we're a multi-unit operator system.
And why do you do that? I mean, I think I have a good sense for that, but I think the audience would really benefit from kind of diving into, instead of just selling one-off locations for somebody who comes in and buys, hey, I want to sign up for one franchise. You guys are going to require that at a minimum, they sign up for 3, which puts them on a development schedule that gives them X period of time, depending on the agreement, to go ahead and get those open and operated. Why is that important for your model?
Well, first of all, internally, everything we build, all the systems, all the platforms, all the management tools is designed for a sophisticated multi-unit operator, with a sophisticated multi-unit operator in mind, knowing that they may be in the store, first store, all the time, but they're not going to be running their, one store, 12 hours a day. They may be, operating other brands. And a lot of our franchise partners do operate a good number of outlets for other brands. And so our investment thesis is building all those systems. And that takes a certain amount of, expertise to understand how to use those management tools and get all those insights, not just into sales and labor, but into consumer sentiment and, important things for the business long term. That's number 1. Number 2, look, we're not building a business so people can buy a job. We're in the same business, like I said, as they are, and we think they should, and we should expect a good return on our investment. And So again, that typically is better suited to a multi-unit operator, somebody that's prepared to make that investment, not just kind of dipping their toe in the water, but is really going to build a business. We have people that own 10 stores, people that own 15 stores for both brands. And that's really we think that is the right way for us to build the brand.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's interesting in the franchise world, and you've been in it for a long, long time, and so have I, but it's always interesting to me, the different ways in which franchisees come to the market, right? Come to learn about franchising. And you have some that come with, very extensive backgrounds and experience and understand sort of the economics and the business modeling and how it works. And they generally very quickly, and with a quick service type restaurant understand that they're coming with a multi-unit play, or else they're not going to come at all. Versus you also have the people who, I'm sure, who just are in love with Capriotti sandwiches or Wing Zone's wings, and all of a sudden, and they work in a corporate job, and either they were downsized or it's been their dream their entire career to get out and run their own business, and they think, oh, I just want to own a Capriotti's and walk off into the sunset. Not fully have thought through sort of all the economics of it, and the fact that at the end of the day, even though you can be obviously profitable and making money with one location, like you said, and I thought it was well put, oftentimes those people, when it's just one location, feel like after they've done it a while that they've just bought themselves a job. So the idea is where can you grow to? How can you grow this to where, it feels like you're actually running a business instead of buying yourself a job in one location.
Yeah, and I think a little bit goes back to unit economics, and that is our franchises, Capriotti and Wing Zone, we expect them to do at least $1 million in sales when we open up. So the gross numbers have to be suited, and we have stores doing closer to $2 million. So the gross revenue has to be big enough to attract a multi-unit operator. If you're looking at a franchise maybe where the unit economics are closer to $500,000 in sales, there's not really enough money in there to hire professional management, and still have enough left over to make worth your while at the end of the day. So some of it has, I will say, probably goes back to the unit economics, and is the brand really well suited for multi-unit operators, and both of our brands clearly are.
And are you looking for operators who come from the restaurant space, or is that not something, or is it just somebody who's got a operational background? What are you guys looking for?
They come from every background that you can imagine. And I will tell you, you mentioned I've been doing this for a long time. My ability to predict who's going to be successful and who's not is not great.
Yeah.
I've had people that I thought would be the best operators in the world, would be incredibly successful, and it just doesn't happen for whatever reason. And then I have other people that have no experience. Maybe they've built successful careers in other industries, but have no food experience, and have always been in corporate America, and they come out and they're unbelievable. What we try to do during the due diligence process is we try to be 100% transparent on who we are, what our values are, and we are a very values forward company. We want to be very clear with them who we are, how we think about business, where we're going, what our mission is, what our vision is, and try and get to know them the same way. Because they are making a long-term commitment, right? They're not just buying, one store. So that process of introducing them to our team, getting to know them, really make sure that we're aligned on all those fronts, and that's the best way. We can help them make a good decision, and we think we can make a good decision. So we spend a lot of time on the front end, introduce them to all of our departments, do all kinds of webinars, do all of the normal background and financial, testing, but we also do predictive index testing where we've tested our existing successful franchisees and try and, match up their cognitive and behavioral, kind of background or, to match as closely to people that have been successful with us in the past, and share that with them. And, we're just trying to help both of us make a good decision because we're looking for long-term relationships.
Do you guys ever do any co-branding where you open up a Capriotti's and a Wing Zone kind of together, in the same, either together in the same exact space or even in the same retail strip center?
Yeah, I would, just to define the terms, we don't what you would call co-brand, where you have one space and you kind of walk in, you go to the left for Capriotti's and the right for Wing Zone, and there's a shared seating area or whatever, almost like a little mini food hall. We don't do that. I'm not a believer in it. I haven't seen it work, frankly, over the years, and some really smart people have tried it, and I've just never seen it work. So we do what you'd call co-development, where they may be in the same center, they may be at opposite ends of the center, they may be a mile from each other. But we have lots of franchisees that are developing both Capriotti's and Wing Zone. But the ideal Capriotti's location may not be the ideal Wing Zone location. And we spend a tremendous amount of time on real estate due diligence and analytics. It's another area we have invested very, very heavily on technology and acquiring data and building what I think is the best real estate team to work with, our franchisees and brokers, et cetera. So we do a lot of due diligence on the real estate side. And, if they happen to be in the same center, which more happens in, I would say, a smaller town where there's fewer options. But in a bigger city, the ideal Capriotti's versus the ideal Wing Zone location might be a few miles apart.
Well, and talk about that. You talked about obviously your growth and you guys working with some great real estate folks and everything. I mean, from what I've read, you guys are looking on the Capriotti side to grow over 500 locations by 2025, and then on the Wing Zone side to grow over 200 locations. And you've had some good growth over the years. What kind of, in addition to technology, as you mentioned, and software, what other things do you put in place to try to help generate that growth? I mean, what are some of the things that you guys are doing?
Well, first of all, we know in order for us to reach our long-term goals, which are candidly a lot more than 500 Capriotti's or 250 Wing Zone, those are kind of placeholders for the end of 25 to make sure we're holding ourselves accountable to actually achieving our mission. But, it starts with having successful franchise partners. And we want our growth to be fueled about 50% with existing partners, or what I would call organic growth, people expanding and going from store 2, 3 to 4, 5, and our people with 10 or 15 going to 20, and so about 50% of our growth is fueled by that organic growth, and about 50% is what I would call new blood, new, franchise partners, many of whom are large, existing multi-unit, multi-brand franchisees. And as we grow, we're attracting more and more of them just because of our reputation. And so I think it's that combination of existing partners that are doing well, getting good returns on investment, enjoying the business and wanting to continue, and new people, joining the system.
So to finish things off, I got a couple final questions for you, David, and thank you so much for your time. This has been really, really informative. I want to talk for a minute about delivery. Obviously, that's a big part, as you've spoken about with Wing Zone and with Capriotti's and with really all restaurants. But in particular, I'm always curious, and I'm curious about your thoughts because you've been in the industry so long. These third-party delivery companies, we all know them. We don't even need to name them. We all know them. And there's good and bad with them, right? I mean, they present an opportunity to get your food out to a lot of people, but they also suck up a lot of your profit. I mean, they take a lot of the cut, sometimes forcing, businesses to raise their prices, which is always a challenge because then you're not as competitive, and there's this whole domino effect with it. I'm curious where you think that's all going. I mean, do you think it's just going to continue to be a battle with these multiple third-party delivery companies, or are systems themselves, franchise systems themselves, going to try to take that over, as hard as it may be to implement? Because I think that's one of the real challenges, is how you implement that successfully.
Well, two things. First of all, it's not really up to me or any of us. It's up to the consumer, right? Like what the consumer wants and what they expect is always going to drive our behavior. And consumers today, thanks to Amazon and some other people, expect you to be everywhere anytime, any place, wherever they want it, however they want it, whether they want to come pick it up or get it on Grubhub or DoorDash or Postmates or Uber Eats or whoever, or use our native app or whatever, right? That's the consumer's expectation. So we have to be really good at that omni-channel approach, and we have to optimize our performance and our profitability. That's on us as operators, and that goes back to why we own and operate stores, because we actually took that on ourselves in our company-owned shops first, way before we exposed franchisees to it. Not just how to do it, but how to make money at it. So we took the arrows. We figured out how to optimize our performance. We figured out how to be profitable on it. We established, national agreements with all of the major delivery providers. Everything, for everyone you can imagine, a bunch you've never heard of that are actually, really accretive to our business as well. And so I think that's number one. I don't. That cat's out of the bag, and it's up to the franchisor, to figure out how to make it all work. Where's it going and what will drive the business? Well, I do have a suggestion for your listeners, and I would read a book called The Future is Faster Than You Think by Stephen Kotler and Peter Diamandis. And it really talks about the impact of technology. We live in what they call the age of convergence, where artificial intelligence and 5G and big data and everything that's out there is actually all those technologies exist. Autonomous vehicles, they're just getting to the point now where they're converging, and robotics and all these things. As those technologies continue to roll out and prove out and converge, you're going to see the costs of operating. If you take a driver out of the delivery vehicle, or you have a drone doing the delivery, right? You don't have the labor cost, and all of a sudden the cost of delivery is going to go down pretty significantly. So those people that are well positioned, and those brands that are well positioned to take advantage of that and are really good at it, will probably adopt very quickly and be advantaged. And those brands that have kind of taken the we're going to wait and see approach and don't really know how to do it, those inflection points are going to come on them really fast. And I think we saw that with COVID. A lot of brands, all of a sudden started using that had never delivered before. You never saw virtual brands. You didn't see ghost kitchens and all those things before. We had already been doing all that stuff for years. So we were actually advantaged. We didn't have to, quote unquote, pivot. We had to make a couple adjustments, and we continue to have record growth, record revenue, and record profitability throughout. And so, our approach is to, be on the forward edge of all of that, not maybe the bleeding edge, but certainly the forward edge, and make sure, again, we're investing ahead of growth and figuring out for our franchise partners, because we don't see it. It's not rolling back. It's not going back to the way it used to be, mostly because the consumer demands it. And that's where we're going to be. We're going to be where the consumer wants us to be.
Well, we always love a good book on franchise euphoria. You mentioned it, and I'll put it in the show notes. But say it one more time. What was the title of that book?
The Future is Faster Than You Think by Peter Diamandis and Stephen Kotler. And it talks about lots of different industries: real estate, finance, supply chain, manufacturing, but specifically has a couple of chapters on food and beverage and the impact on our industries. The technology innovation that is coming out, it's there. It's just, it's being adopted. It's being figured out. It's being integrated. The impact and the potential to really advance our businesses, things like robotics and artificial intelligence, we're working on both those things and have been for several years now. As it proves itself out and is really ready to roll, it's going to make a big difference in terms of our ability to satisfy the consumers again. Customers are going to be like, hey, I can order Amazon 24 hours a day. Why can't I have my wings 24 hours a day? Well,
exactly.
So we want to be prepared for that.
Final question. You've got a lot of experiences I've alluded to. You've been in this game a long time. You've got a lot of people listening who are at different levels, different stages in the game. If you had to, there's multiple things. I don't want to make it seem like it's impossible to whittle it down to one. But tell me, from your perspective, if you're out there trying to grow a franchise brand, you're at the starting line. Maybe you franchised it. Maybe you have a few locations. What's your piece of advice for how to best think about, growing a brand so that it can sustain like the ones that you've been involved in?
I would say, first of all, you have to realize it's probably going to take anywhere between 3 and 6 times longer than you think it's going to take, and be 3 to 6 times more expensive than you think it's going to be. So if you're prepared for that, and if you're in it for the long haul, then the great part of our industry is that people that are really good at it, that do it day in and day out, they're not out there to sell you anything, that they have no programs. The people that are great at it, in whatever field it is, legal, marketing, IT, supply chain, are almost always totally willing to share their experiences and their knowledge with you. We are in a unique industry, because most industries are very secretive and won't share anything. You go to a franchise conference or National Restaurant Association convention, or any of the technology.
People are just excited to be around other people who are in the same area, even if it's totally different. They just talk away, Yeah.
And so that's the fun part of the business to me, right? Is like getting to know people, building long-term relationships, and, who knows if we'll do business together or not in the future. Doesn't really matter, right? Like, just that's the relationship side of the business that makes this all fun to me, right? Otherwise, it's just transactional, which is just about making money, and that's not that much fun to me. So I just suggest you get involved, you stay involved, you go to the major conferences, you get to know the people that are really doing it, and you build a relationship with them. Buy them a beer, buy them a cup of coffee, and every time there's a major conference, I'll get emails from people saying, hey, and we're based in Vegas, so it's very convenient for me. Like, hey, can we, you want to go grab dinner, or you want to do this? I love to do that, and the people that I know that are great at what they do, they love to do it, and are more than willing to do it, as long as the newcomer is respectful and doesn't show up with, I'm going to dominate the world in the next 3 years, and I'm all about world domination. I'm like, okay, great. Well, I'll see you later. So I think if you're respectful and you approach those kind of people, they are more than happy to offer their help.
For more information on Capriotti's, you can go to capriottis.com. That's CAPRIOTTIS.com. Capriottis.com, CAPRIOTTIS.com. And if you want more information on WingZone, go to wingzone.com. That's wingzone.com. Thank you, David. This has been very enlightening, very good, very, tons of interesting tidbits. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. And I wish you nothing but the best for the future with Capriotti's and WingZone.
Well, thank you, Josh. And I'll hopefully look forward to seeing you in person at one of these conferences and continuing the conversation.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Franchise Euphoria. If you enjoyed it, please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and review. It really helps to get this show out to more and more people. Also, if you have any questions, have ideas for guests or topics, please email me, josh@indyfranchiselaw.com. That's Josh at indyfranchiselaw.com. And finally, please note that this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes and is not in any way, shape, or form meant to be any kind of legal advice. If you're seeking legal advice, please contact a lawyer. Have a great one. Happy franchising.